Oh, welcome for a very special workshop with the BeeChicas. I'm Kathy Lane, and I am on the roof of the Boulder Public Library with the BeeChicas. So we have Tracy Belhumer in blue, we have Teresa Beck in peach, we have Deborah Foy in green, and we have Cynthia Scott in pink. And so Cynthia is going to be our videographer today, and we are going to show you a live hive inspection with the generous support of the Boulder Library Foundation. All library rules and guidelines apply to our online events. We welcome you to put your questions at any time into the chat. And I'm going to turn it over to Deborah, who will introduce us today. And Shannon, thank you so much for being in the background.
Welcome everyone to the Boulder Public Library Apiary. If you are in the children's playground or on the Boulder bike path, look up and you'll often see us tending the bees throughout the season. In today's live inspection, we're going to bring you inside the magical world of the beehive with us. We'll be looking for the queen, see if she has room to lay eggs, and if we're lucky, we'll spot her majesty. We'll show you frames of eggs and brood and talk about the different kinds of bees, and we'll be checking honey and pollen stores. The hive we're inspecting has a super fun story, and Teresa's going to tell us all about it.
Hi, welcome to our workshop on looking inside of a hive, going undercover and seeing what's inside of a beehive. This particular hive was caught in gun barrel. It's a swarm that we caught, and it was a pretty low hanging branch in a pine tree. They're doing quite well up here, and hives swarm in the springtime because generally they're very congested, and so if there's not enough room in the brood chamber, then they cannot get the pheromone from the queens, so they start building queen cells at the bottom of a frame, and the queen lays eggs in them, and there could be like 20 queen cells, but only one queen will emerge and be the queen bee. And so we are going to see a short video on our hive capture for this particular colony.
Great, and Tracy's gonna, while we're doing that, we're gonna open up, get this started, get the smoker started, get the hive opened up. So enjoy this video for 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Yay.
In here by a lot.
Smart to get 2 boxes ready. Good. Great.
A lot of pheromone fanning going on. I think we got her in there all right. Woohoo!
They flew.
Hive, just got the smoker started. And here we go, opening the lid.
We usually don't need the smoker, especially in the springtime, because these are very gentle bees, but we like to have it in case we need to push the bees back into the hive when we're putting on the boxes. So let's open it up.
Want to give it a little smoke under here, Teresa?
Oh, sure. Sometimes we give a little smoke to start to say, hey, we are here.
And that cracking sound is the sound of Propolis. It's their glue. It's a plant resin from trees, plants, or like what would you call it? Part of their immune system.
Propolis.
And before we open
This is called a inner cover. We just took out the outer cover, and now this is the inner cover.
Would you like to look at the entrance before we open it and just see
We
what's
looked
going
at
on?
it, looking good.
Okay.
And we're going to gently take this off. It's a little sticky from the propolis. And we always check the bottom of the inner cover to see if maybe the queen might have wandered up there. In 15 years of beekeeping, I found a queen on one inner cover, but she can do it. So there we take that away. And now we're going to put on something called a frame holder. It's very handy. And we could take out frames and take a look at what they're doing inside.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. Do we want to see if we can find a drone to start? We can see what we can see. This could all be honey, but I think we may have some brood up here. They are building wax like crazy. Do you see all this nice new white wax that they're building? That looks pretty heavy. What's in there, Trace?
So it feels just like honey, and usually they do put honey on the top and on the sides of their brood nest. So we always start with the outside frames just so we don't accidentally roll a queen. But what do you think, Cynthia?
So right here, they're building new comb over old capped honey, because this is a bar we put in earlier on from last year. So in the shadow part over here, this is capped honey, and this right here is open nectar, which is what they bring back from the forage from the flowers. And they've been building new comb right here, the white comb. And when the nectar gets to be under 18%, then they'll cap it with wax.
I think Cynthia's going to talk about that, the food, and a little bit later. But since we're right in the honey, it is
Same thing, more capped honey, more open nectar.
Yeah. I'm going to take 2 frames out just to make room. And then, do you think that there might be any drones over here?
I think we saw some brood in the center last inspection, didn't we?
We did for sure.
Yeah,
and I
they're
think
right
the
there.
main brood chamber is on this side, the west side, because it's warmer.
So when a bee is born, one of their first jobs, we're looking at kind of the older bees that are making honey and ripening honey, but when a bee's first born, her first job, wow, they've already cleaned out all these cells.
So those are clean.
Her first job is to turn around and clean a cell so the queen can lay an egg. But I don't see any kind of brood or baby bees up here.
I think that job list, Tracy, is so fascinating. How bees all have a task in the beehive and they all do every job.
Yeah. So these girls, we could call them like house bees,
Got some
nurse bees, but their first job is to clean a cell. And then their second job, do you see these girls here checking inside of the other cells that have larvae? Can you see the larvae, Cynthia?
Yeah, that's good in the sun.
I think in the shade it might have
That's
looked
drone
in the
brood,
shade.
right, Tracy?
Yeah. Why don't you move it into the shade a little more?
Okay.
Yeah.
Shade
There we
you?
go. Yeah. So those fat, like larvae that are shiny, glistening white, those are baby bees. So
I don't know if they can see that.
so you can see the
Right
nurse
here.
bees looking after them and checking on them, and they get checked on like, yeah, so frequently. But let's see, any other jobs in here? These
are
are
baby
also
bees.
the receiving nectar from fielders. So field bees
Are
looking
these all worker bees or do we see some drones up here?
no drones. Yeah,
Just the drone brood, right there.
yeah.
That's
But
drone brood.
See the like, maybe we could go through like pretend I am a newborn bee. I'm going to turn around and clean my cell, and then the next thing I'm going to start to do is that my glands will develop, and I'll start producing wax, and I'll cap cells. And here you can see some of the girls are capping cells, or worker bees, all female.
Now that's a different kind of capping, Tracy. What's this one?
Yeah, I think Deborah's going to speak to all the development, but I'm trying to find the different casts. Casts are like different characters. So there's, we talked about one single queen, and then like tens of thousands of workers. Oh, Cynthia found a drone right there. Their eyes are huge, touching each other at the top, and their bottom's really round. So their job is to find the queen and mate with her. So they need to have big eyes to see her in flight.
And that's from another
And-
hive, right? The drones mate from
Yeah.
from another
Yep.
hive.
So their job is to mate with the queen in flight. So they need to have like big muscles and their bigger bodies. and their wings are even like heftier. So that's how you can tell the drones. But sometimes we mistake them for the queen, but look for the rounded bottom. They don't have the ability to sting.
Well, you can really see the size difference between the drone and the worker too, can't you?
Yeah.
Can you put it in the shade?
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
just see if we can get it. Yeah, there. Maybe we
Better?
can see. Can
Yeah.
someone point to the drone and then point to the worker bee? So
Did he go to the other side, or is he
He's near
still
the
here?
honey capped honey. There he goes, right there.
Ah,
Right
perfect.
here. Yeah. And
And
inside
you can
of the
pet him
hive,
because he doesn't even sting.
inside of the hive, he is fed by the workers, and his excrement, his poops, are carried out by the workers. The hive is very clean, so that is the job of a house cleaning bee.
Well, he's quite the pampered gentleman, isn't he?
Yeah. Also a mortuary bee. That's the job. I mean, I would hate to have that job of cleaning out the poop and the dead bees, but that is one of her jobs she'll go through in her life.
So Tracy, does every worker bee do every job?
No, well, in her lifetime mostly, but you might be lucky enough to attend the queen. And if you attend the queen, you'll feed her royal jelly, as you will feed the baby larva after the eggs hatch.
For about 3 days, right?
Yep. So in the hive, all her jobs, that's beautiful.
That
Deborah,
is
what is that?
Lovely comb.
Want to talk about how
I mean,
special this is?
Yes.
Oh, yes. This is what we call capped brood. And Kathy may have a picture of eggs she can show us in case we don't see them in a frame. But as Tracy said, a queen's job is to grow the hive through laying eggs every day. And a healthy queen can lay up to 1,500 eggs in a day. So she's expanding the hive very quickly in the springtime.
Deborah, I think that's even her weight in eggs.
I think it is.
Yeah,
I
that's
think I read that. So when an egg is laid, it's an egg for 3 days, and then it hatches into a larva. And a larva's job is to grow big and round and plump, and I hope we'll find a frame with some larvae.
Yeah.
They expand their size by 1,500 times in 5 days. So when they get big enough that they're ready to spin a cocoon and grow into a bee, they get a little cap on their cell, like the brown, like this little cap.
I can't believe
So one of the jobs that Tracy mentioned was to cap the cells, and the bees will cap it, and the larva inside will pupate, and it'll emerge 21 days total from egg to emergence as a fully developed bee.
We're trying to find a queen as we look at these.
21 days is only 3 weeks.
It's
So
so fast for a whole bee to grow from an egg to a fully developed bee.
Well, and then the age, so then it's 21 days of life as an adult bee, isn't it? 3 weeks. Wait, no. 3
About
weeks
6
in the
weeks,
hive.
isn't it?
No,
Yeah.
Oh,
3
in the
weeks,
hive.
3 weeks,
Yeah.
3
In
weeks
the
to
hive.
become a forager.
So 21 days
Yep.
inside of the hive doing all these inside, you know,
Jobs.
yeah, inside jobs, and then 3 weeks or 21 days doing the foraging. So when we're talking about like this adult bee developing, one of her jobs when she's about 15 days is to start orienting at the entrance and guarding.
What does orienting mean, Tracy?
It's bees have to locate their hive based on like landmarks. So they fly in front of the hive in figure eights, and they look at like recognizing trees.
Is it the position of the sun too?
Well, that too, if they're going to fly to gather nectar, but if they're just trying to memorize the location of their hive, it's called orienting. And then they get the job of guard bee next. And then after guard bee, like hanging around at the entrance, smelling any workers coming in that might not smell like their hive. Then she gets to forage.
So look at that on this side, Tracy. All drone.
So I'm hoping if we go down to the next box, we can maybe see a worker chewing through her cap to emerge.
What's happening here? What's this white thing right there?
Oh, one of the pupa broke open. So
It probably was attached to the other frame.
So,
So
Deborah,
it's a bee baby.
Yep. So
little
that's
drone.
a
Larva.
drone, and it looks like it was already capped. So it was pupating and
yeah.
trying to complete its metamorphosis into an adult, and the cap broke open. So Tracy's maybe mortuary bees will be cleaning that larva out because the cap's been broken. So they'll clean that out, and they'll get it ready for the queen to lay a new egg.
And Cynthia, what's this versus that? Like, Okay, again, there's some more capped honey up here and open nectar up here. And pretty soon we're going to see pollen or bee bread.
Oh, I see a little bit.
There's a little bit there,
Yeah,
but
it's
we'll
kinda-
get a closer look at that next time, which is the bee bread is the food that the baby bees
And
are
do you
fed.
see the holes in between? Sometimes the hygienic bees will pull out diseased larvae or larvae that have mites in them. And that's why there's sometimes holes in the beautiful, solid frame. And the last one's honey. We probably don't need to look at that. We could just push it all back together and get ready to move that super to
While
the...
we're doing that, is there any questions, do you think?
Yeah, Kat, do we have any questions?
So what we're going to do next is take the top box off and look in the next box down.
Beautiful.
Really good brood pattern. So a beekeeper is really focused on how the brood looks, which by brood we mean all stages of baby bees. And so when there's a solid brood pattern, it means there's not holes, not very many holes between the capped cells. And that tells you that the queen is laying well. She's laying in each cell, and the bees are leaving each baby to, come to its full lifespan. If there's disease in the hive, then we might see a lot more what we call spotty brood, and that is a result of a disease or something in the hive that's not right.
So how heavy are those supers when you have to lift off a box like you're doing right now?
That top box wasn't that heavy because it didn't have that much honey in it. So the top supers that are honey supers are the heaviest, and those can get to weigh 100 pounds easily. And that's why we need help to lift them off. But the brood frames and the brood boxes are much lighter weight because they're mostly just baby brood.
Sin, I have a question. We noticed that the honey is always sort of at the outer edges. Is that normal?
Yes, that is definitely normal, and that's where they store the honey, on the edges of the hive body, and they put the baby brood inside the middle of the hive. And the way that it's organized is eggs and larvae and capped brood, and then pollen or bee bread or food, and then honey, and then open nectar, and then capped honey. And then when they get extra, then the bees store it on the top of the hive in the honey supers.
Look what we have here. Lots of larvae. Can you see it in the sun, or should we shade it?
This came right from the middle of the hive.
Try it in the shade.
Okay.
I'll come around there. See if I can see. It's so bright out here I can hardly see my screen. I think down.
So when we talked about an egg hatching in 3 days, this is how it looks after an egg hatches. It looks like a milky white pool of royal jelly that the larva is eating until, about day 4, they switch to honey and pollen.
Yep,
Can you point to where everyone should be looking?
Right in the center, Tracy.
the frame to move the right position.
Where's your finger? Oh, there it is.
So that little larva will just float in that pool of food and just happily eat all day long until it's big and plump. And then on day 9, this frame will look like the other ones that were all capped. These bees in the hive that Tracy talked about, the worker bees, will cap this frame, and then all of those bees will pupate and emerge on day 21.
You talked about what the worker brood eats, but what does a queen brood eat?
Very good question, Tracy, because the queen is the only bee in the hive that only eats royal jelly for her entire lifetime. And the royal jelly is different from bee bread because it's secreted by a gland on the top of the worker bee's head. And that is fed to all larvae for the first 3 days. And then on the fourth day, only the queen gets the royal jelly. And that's why she's different. She gets a lot more food, and she gets a lot richer food, which helps her grow big and strong and extra large.
Yeah, it's just her diet. That's the only difference between a worker developing and a queen is her diet. Isn't that right, Cynthia?
That's
Or
right.
Deborah?
And
That
it has
is
to be a
right.
female worker egg, right? Not drones. Drones are haploid and worker eggs are diploid.
Oh,
What do you mean by that, Teresa?
Pattern over there.
Well, diploid means it has 2 chromosomes, and
Trying to find the
haploid means it has half of that. So a half chromosome or 1 chromosome, which makes a drone.
No sign of the queen yet,
No,
right?
I've been looking. I've been kind of going through a little bit.
I did not see her on my frame.
So Deborah, where do you think you're going to see the queen? Where are you likely to see the queen in the hive? Do you know, or do you just look randomly on every single comb?
We do know. Sometimes we look randomly if she's a Houdini and likes to hide, but usually a queen is found on a frame that has freshly laid eggs. So sometimes when you inspect, you don't see the queen, and that's okay. If you see eggs, you know you have a queen right hive because the queen has been laying within the last 3 days. Because remember, eggs hatch at day 3. So if you see eggs, you know that a queen has been there recently. We'll often look for frames that have open brood, like that last one we showed you that was all larvae in the milky white pools of food.
Mm-hmm.
That frame recently had a queen on it.
Oh, and maybe you can see better here with the light on it, actually.
Oh, okay. See the
See
white?
the white? That, I think, shows a little better. All this white is big, fat larva. So it's...
Is it ready to almost be capped, do you think? Big and plump and...
Do you notice
Yes.
Cynthia is not wearing gloves? These are nurse bees. They're young and their stingers haven't developed yet. So they're not quite nearly as aggressive as the old foragers. And so when we inspect the hive, we really like it to be the middle of the day when the foragers are out.
It would be so fun to find a bee chewing her way out. Let's keep our eyes peeled. Or some
And
fuzzy
Deborah-
little baby bees.
Deborah, why did the larvae have to be capped?
The larvae have to be capped so that it protects the bees spinning a cocoon and then pupating into an adult. So that's a sensitive period. It lasts 12 days. So at day 9, it's capped, and it takes them 12 days to pupate and develop into a fully developed bee and chew their way out. So the capping is a protective layer.
Cynthia, I want to show this frame.
Okay.
Because it is such a beautifully capped worker brood. Watch. Do you see how solid that is? She's a great queen. She lays in a good pattern. She puts the drone at the bottom and the worker at the top, and then the honey and bee bread all around the edges. So she has her pantry right on this frame.
Right, so over here again, the bigger, bumpier larva, capped brood is drone, and the flatter one that looks more like cardboard is the worker.
Can you find a baby bee, Cynthia, with your finger? I see a few that are fuzzy and have little tiny eyes.
Let's see.
Some nurse bees.
Lots
There's
of
one right
nurse
there.
bees. I haven't seen any
think
babies.
let's look on the
yet.
That
open.
just came across.
Sin, you mentioned something about bee bread. Can you talk about that? I think there might be some on this frame.
Over here.
Oh yes, okay, so bee bread is pollen mixed with nectar. So a bee goes out on a foraging trip and packs her pollen pockets with fresh pollen from the flowers that she visits. And then she adds a little bit of nectar to that pollen to make it kind of sticky, puts it in her pollen pocket, brings it back to the hive where she gets unloaded by her worker bees, the house bees, and then they mix it with a little more nectar and pack it into the honeycomb.
Do they add some enzymes or any bacteria to help it ferment?
That's from the honey that they put in. That's been in their honey crop.
Okay.
And so, yes, there's definitely enzymes in that process that make it kind of fermented. That's probably why they call it bee bread, don't you think?
And it smells yeasty. I've noticed that. that it smells honey.
And how do the bees know to make the different, like, how do they know, when to cap it? And is it instinctual, or does someone, does another bee train them? Was the
That I'm
question.
not really sure how they know. They just seem to know when it's time to cap the honey, because the moisture content is really important in honey for the bees, and they have to have it less than 18% water
Or it becomes
in the
wine.
honey, or it will ferment, and become mead.
I guess they have the ability to test it, but I don't really know how.
I know, that's something I haven't
Maybe they
looked
take
into.
a little sip and are like fine wine,
Too-
it's ready.
Too wet.
It's
Too wet.
19%. Oh, it's 17%.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're gonna put this back in. Are we gonna go to the bottom?
Let's go to the bottom and see if we can spot her majesty.
Great. Have we seen this queen before? Do we know what she looks like?
We haven't seen this queen.
So this is a copper queen that was from the Bee Literate Hive 2 years ago, I think. And then we've also had a black queen, and so she's on screen as well. And you can see the more elongated abdomen is one way that you can see that you've got a queen. And we also we showed this picture earlier of a queen laying eggs, and you can see how all the bees around her are circling her. And so the bees, when they're in a circle around the queen, what are they doing at that point?
They're called the attendants. And as Tracy was saying before, not every bee does that job in the hive. So the attendants of the queen are lucky, just like the Queen's Court in England. They feed her, they groom her, they even take her poop out of the hive. All the queen has to do is lay eggs, and the worker bees and attendant bees do everything else for her, the one queen in the hive.
And since this one is a swarm, we actually don't know what she looks like. Let me say again, we saw eggs, so we don't have to go to the bottom. We're just going to do this just to see if we can spot her for you, but normally we would stop.
And Cynthia, can you do a close-up on that frame? Because that looks very different than some of the frames we were looking at earlier.
It really does, Kathy.
Oh, very shiny. Do you see how shiny that is? That is nectar, freshly foraged nectar brought into the hive.
And wouldn't you say very new beeswax?
Definitely, yes. The lighter and whiter the beeswax is, the newer it is. And this is a swarm, and when you catch a swarm, they are so poised and ready, because in the natural world, if they are in a tree trunk, they have to be ready to build comb immediately. And so when you get a swarm, you're happy.
Can you talk about the propolis that's at the bottom of that frame? Is that what that is?
Oh yeah, that's sticky
Oh,
stuff.
I didn't see it. Thank you, Kathy. That's cool. Oh, propolis is a magical substance. Tracy talked about that a little bit earlier. It's from plant resins, and it's medicinal in the hive. It has unbelievable antibacterial qualities, and the bees use it to seal cracks in the hive. So they clearly put it on the bottom of this frame to attach it to the bottom of the box, but they'll use it medicinally if they've been exposed to a virus or a disease. If you see a lot of propolis in your hive, it's a strong sign that your hive is super healthy and able to protect itself.
Great. And Teresa has something.
Yeah, we find that this one is a pantry. This entire box is filled with nectar and pollen becoming bee bread. And so they're using this to feed the brood up above. There isn't any active brood, no eggs, no larvae or capped brood down here.
And one more thing about propolis, we talk about the products from the hive. Everybody knows honey and beeswax, of course. Propolis is another product from the hive. You'll often see it in tinctures with echinacea. Humans use it because it boosts our immune system as well. And there's a throat spray that professional singers, like opera singers, work that's propolis based because it's so soothing to a throat that is overworked. So propolis is an excellent product from the hive. Most people don't realize that comes from a beehive.
One thing about it too is the more propolis in the hive, the less that the bee's immune system has to work.
Yeah.
So it's such
I
a
talked
key-
about how healthy a hive is that has tons of propolis.
Yeah. So some beekeepers are like roughing up the inside of their hives so that they'll put more propolis in those gaps and holes and stuff, and it helps their whole immune system.
So what was down here, Chicas? I didn't see.
Yeah,
it was just
Drone brood. Well, there's a little drone brood in the middle, but no worker brood.
No
and
eggs,
then-
no larvae.
Lots of bee bread down here. So she hasn't been. We were hoping we'd see her down here.
Will the queen come down here or no?
She will, but it's all backed up right now with honey and bee bread. So we might need to make room for her to lay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
in
usually
some-
you're going to only see the queen where you see eggs. Sometimes though she can run way down to the corner, especially when a beekeeper is trying to find the queen. She usually
So
runs
true.
and goes hide in the
And she
corner.
doesn't like smoke. We did use a bit of smoke to get the bees to go back in the box. She might have run away.
But we can't wait to see her because we haven't seen it in this hive, right? It's the
No,
summer
she's
one.
a brand new.
one.
Yeah.
But we're not too worried that we didn't see her today. Why is that?
Because we saw eggs.
Yep. So we see eggs. We know that the queen has been in the hive within the last 3 days. Because remember what Deborah said, that eggs are 3 days, and on the 4th day, the egg hatches into a larva, and then it starts the whole process of eating the bee bread when it becomes a larva.
And Cynthia, how do the bees tell each other where there's food?
Oh, that is such a cool thing. A lot of people are learning that Waggle Dance, which is the communication that the bees do to tell each other where the nectar is. And Tracy, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
So they can't speak, but they can like wiggle. But they also have 17 glands on their body to like emit different smells, and those are all communication methods too. Like so, when they want to call everybody home to their hive in the evening or something, or after our inspection, they lift their bums up. And let's go look and see if we can see that. And this one, yeah, right there. Do you see that? She's opening up the last stripe on her abdomen, and that's the nasinal gland, and that's spreading the scent of the hive to say, "Come this way." Or what do you think? She might be just drying and ripening nectar.
Yeah,
and
I see
fanning
the
her
gland on
wings.
that one way on the far
That one?
side.
Okay, yeah. She just.
Oh, and that one just brought in some pollen.
Yep.
So it's fun to sit at the front of the hive and just watch and see what the bees are doing.
Right. These are the oldest bees, and the way that they die after about 3 weeks is they wear their wings off. They just wear themselves out, or they get caught in a rainstorm. So they've done their duty to the hive, and you really feel for them at that point. They've lived 6 weeks. That one stung somebody, and the stinger is out, and so are some of the guts.
Yeah, when they sting, a bee will die.
Yeah.
Except for the queen, she can sting multiple times.
So that's super interesting. When they sting, they have a barbed stinger, and it sticks, and then the reason they die is because the stinger pulls their innards out when they try to fly away. So,
And you saw that.
yeah, you don't usually get to see that without an ouch attached to it, so that was pretty lucky.
Yeah.
And what do you recommend that people do if they get stung by a bee?
The very, very first thing you should do is find something sharp like a credit card and scrape your skin to get the stinger out. Because of that barb, the stinger will stay in your skin, and that venom sac will continue pumping. So the faster you get that, a fingernail, anything, scrape your skin, and then
Generally ice it.
ice.
And you can put raw honey on it.
Yeah,
That's
honey
very
works well.
soothing.
And if you're like me and you're reacting a little bit more strongly, you can do Benadryl or like a Benadryl cream. What's the stuff you use? Sting Stop or something?
Oh, an ammonia-based gel after bite. But
After
really, Benadryl is the thing that I need sometimes.
Yeah,
And
that works best for me.
A homeopathic
Apis mellifera,
Apis mellifera.
which
That's
is the
name of the bee.
yes. That's
And that's the
Latin name.
homeopathic
Oh,
little
look, Teresa,
tablet. Oh,
you
do I
had
have something?
another bee on your head.
Okay, we have one more to go on. Shall I pick this lid up?
So I'll just add one more thing to that question, and that is be sure if you get stung, don't slam your hand over and press down on the sting. because there is still venom in that sac, and if you press on it, you'll push more venom into your skin. So you want to sweep it off really lightly with a credit card, as Deborah said.
Cynthia, can you tell a little bit about our hives and why they're painted the way they are?
Oh, we started these beehives. We were trying to figure that out. We think 2016 or 2015.
2015, we started talking about it in 2016 because we had to talk to Colorado Fish and Wildlife and Parks and Rec and FAM. So we had to talk to a lot of people to make sure that we were keeping people safe and bees safe, and also away from bears and other animals that might want to investigate the hives.
Yes, and so we put these bee boxes together with maybe some of you. We built them all in the makerspace. We had a beehive naming contest. This one won for being bee literate, which is now our hashtag. So you can follow the hashtag on Instagram, which is hashtag bee literate, and you can follow along because we post every now and then about what's going on in the hives.
What are we doing now, Sam?
Now we're just putting a queen excluder on the top. Since this is a really full, happy, active, healthy hive, it's ready for a honey super. And so we put the queen excluder on there because we don't want the queen to lay eggs in the honey super. We want the honey super to stay all honey. So the queen excluder has holes big enough for a worker bee to get through, but too small for a queen to walk through. So our honey super will be just honey. Some people use honey queen excluders, and some people don't. So that's another topic for why. Sometimes people want to give the bees more room.
And before we go, we have a slide that Tracy made so that people at home can see if they can figure out which types of bees are on the screen. And so look with your eyes to see if you can find the queen, some drones, and then the rest are worker bees. And we have an annotated version so that you can see where the drones are and the queen is circled in the orange. And so thank you for this opportunity to see the library hives. We're glad that they're healthy. So Teresa's putting in strips with a wax starter. And do you want to say why you're starting off with the strips like that?
To let them draw down. So we put this in the hive and the bees will draw down the entire frame so it looks like that. And that'll be either their new honey super or the new home for all the eggs and the brood that the queen creates.
That is so cool.
Yay, we're so happy that we have this swarm and we're able to have a fresh start for the bees.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, chicas. And before we go, we want to invite everyone to the Bee Boulder Festival. And so that is on Saturday, September 18th, and that will be just on the other side of the park by where the farmers market is in the bandshell. And the chicas are instrumental in making this amazing festival happen. And so we'll be dissecting flowers and learning about the different types of pollinators and what kinds of flowers that they need and what flowers need them as well.
Hands-on activities for kids. A super fun day.
A super fun day.
On September 18th. It's a Saturday.
Yeah. So thank you, chicas. Thank you, Cynthia, Teresa, Tracy, and Deborah.
Yay.
Thank you to the Boulder Library Foundation for sponsoring these events. And you can support bees without becoming a beekeeper too, like creating a native bee habitat. We've got some videos on how you can do that at home. You can plant pollinator forage and volunteer for Pollinator Appreciation Month. So visit the BeeChicas or Seed to Table playlists on the Boulder Public Library's YouTube for more ideas to support pollinators. So thanks to all of you for joining us. Thanks to Shannon in the background. And we wish you to have a wonderful day today. Take care.
And thanks to Kathy behind the scenes over here on top of the roof at headquarters.